Welcome, friends, to a second live stream from Crime Time with DutyRon. This is the second of the day. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining. And if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, today I have a special guest. I have the retired New York City Chief of Staff of the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, Barbara Butcher. She is here to talk to us about Tammy Daybell. She's one of 3 victims that Lori Vallow Daybell is on trial for the murder of Tammy Daybell. And, you know, we spend so much time focusing on all of the testimony and all the things that are going on and the moving parts in the trial as it's commencing and as things are developing. But we always want to keep our victims in the forefront and their families. You know, the Woodcocks are so emotional and present in that court. Kay and Larry, it's his birthday today. Just devastating for them to hear the details, the gruesome details of what happened to JJ, Tylee. And now we hear we're starting to hear some about what happened to Tammy Daybell. But before I get into it, I want to say thank you to the Patreon supporters, the channel members, the moderators, the replay viewers, the subscribers, the folks who engage us here. You guys are what makes this a great place. So I'm giving thanks and praise to each and every one of you right here. And if you haven't yet, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I want to play just a little bit today from Law and Crime Network. It's just going to set up. We know that the trial was abruptly halted today because the prosecutor, on the prosecutor side, one of the attorneys for the prosecutor had a death in the family. They graciously asked the court, and the court graciously granted a kind of a holdover. They're going to restart tomorrow. So the court is in recess now until tomorrow due to an unexpected death in the family. So let's just play this video real quick, and I'll bring Barbara right in, and we'll be right back with you.
Accused doomsday cult mom Lori Vallow Daybell faces multiple charges, including first-degree murder for the deaths of her children JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, as well as her husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. If convicted, the doomsday cult mom faces life in prison. Well, our very own Gigi McKelvey joins us from outside the Ada County Courthouse in Idaho. And Gigi, we learned that court ended early today. What can you tell us?
There was a death on the prosecution side. A family member of prosecutor Lindsay Blake passed away. So they're being gracious and allowing today to adjourn early. Also, there will be no court on Monday due to this. So that's the reason we're out early and will not have court on Monday.
And tragic. I feel terrible that the prosecutor had a death in the family, especially trying a case about deaths. But what occurred substantially in the courtroom this morning? Was there anyone on the stand that could shed light on the deaths of anyone else?
Well, Detective Ray Hermosillo from the Rexburg Police Department, he finished up on cross-exam. He was one of the first people on this case, even before it was known the kids were missing. And then Joe Powell from the Fremont County Sheriff's Office came on after him and gave a little bit of insight into a few aspects of the investigation. He was brought on initially to look for the Jeep that was tied to that attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, who is Lori Vallow's ex-nephew-in-law and the ex-husband of Melanie Boudreaux Pulowski, who was involved in this group. Then it became intermittent surveillance on Chad and Lori. We saw a couple of pictures of them we had not previously seen, of them walking hand in hand into a Hobby Lobby and sitting at a restaurant table across from each other. And then he was also present when they exhumed Tammy Daybell's body. So we saw the progression photos of them exhuming her, as well as the photo of her on the autopsy table. And the other thing was that he checked in on her prescriptions and found that number one, she didn't go to the doctor very often, but the only medication that she was on were 2 different types of medications for depression. And that played into reopening that investigation into her death, along with all the suspicious death and circumstances surrounding Lori and Chad.
Now, the exhumation and the autopsy that they're about to talk about with Tammy Daybell, she was not autopsied initially when she died. 2 weeks before Chad Daybell married Lori Vallow and became Lori Vallow Daybell. Why not? And could you remind our viewers what the cause of death now that the prosecution says happened to to Tammy Daybell, sorry.
Well, it's the coroner that determines whether an autopsy is performed or not. And the coroner, Brenda Dye, just concluded that this was a natural death. And Tammy was immediately taken to the funeral home and buried. Although we have heard that Chad declined an autopsy. But the Rexburg Sheriff, Lynn Humphreys, made clear soon after this hit the news that it's not the family's decision. So there were just a lot of unanswered questions. She was 49 and really nobody said she was in bad health. And Chad and the kids were saying she was not in good health. So they exhumed her body and found that her cause of death was asphyxiation, which is not a natural death. So it's a homicide. And now Lori is charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in her death. Chad has the actual murder charge for her, for Tammy Daybell, his ex-wife.
Yeah.
So there you have it. A lot of moving parts here. And a lot of this was confusing when it was happening. And we brought my next guest who's going to be joining me. We brought her on to talk about this coroner system and how these decisions get made. But without further ado, I want to bring in Barbara Butcher, retired New York City medical examiner's chief of staff, a legal medical death investigator, a fan favorite, as Bill Cannon says, of crime. Barbara, thank you for taking out the time. Heck, I don't think we've ever gotten together during the middle of the day. So thank you for being here.
Not for work, anyway.
You're giving away trade secrets now, Barbara.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Ron.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I played that Law and Crime Network piece because it did at the end go into some of the details that they've yet to talk about in court. We had a little bit of a bump in the road here today, and court was let go for the day due to a death in the family on the prosecution side. But Barbara, I wanted you to walk the audience, just if you could, a little bit, because you're familiar with this case and how she died in her sleep. We talked about the frothy foam that was coming out of her mouth when she was on the floor. And she was a runner, she was training for a marathon, relatively in good health. How and why? How the hell does a woman like this get brought directly to a funeral home based on the circumstances surrounding her death?
Beats the hell out of me, Ron. It's not good practice. The coroner's investigator did show up at the scene and was told by Mr. Daybell that his wife was sleeping, that she had mentioned, I believe she mentioned something the day before about feeling a little off, and that when he woke up, she was dead. And this is a very healthy woman, young. So the coroner's investigator, the medical legal death investigator, did come to the scene. And Mr. Daybell said, I don't want an autopsy. I think she died of natural causes. And for some godforsaken reason, the investigator said, okay. That would never fly. That would never fly anywhere else. I am awestruck.
Yeah.
Allowing that.
Especially when we look at the totality of everything that's surrounding Mr. Daybell and surrounding Lori Vallow, who at that time, they were together, they were talking. There was text messages that were sent by Lori's prior husband, Charles Vallow, to Tammy Daybell, and basically told her, your husband is cheating with my wife.
That's right.
And those text messages were shared on the internet. And so all of this was out, but we don't know how many people knew about it. But at the end of the day, if someone dies that's relatively healthy in their home here in the Northeast, you're not going directly to a funeral home.
No way. No siree. Especially in the absence of any medical conditions. I read that she was on fluoxetine, which is Prozac, and for depression, also tramadol. Now that can be a bad combination. I'm not sure if she was taking tramadol regularly. That's a mild narcotic pain reliever, often used post surgery or for back pain. Anyway, so the statement was at the time that she probably died of heart failure or heart attack. Well, a heart attack is a very specific thing. A myocardial infarction is a blockage in the heart that causes muscle to die. The person has extreme chest pain, and the heart can't pump, and they die. Heart failure is something else entirely. Heart failure is a description of the result of diseases. Heart failure is not a disease. It's the result of hypertension, myocarditis, a viral infection of the heart muscle. What it means is that the heart muscle cannot pump effectively. Right. And so you get congestive heart failure, you get general heart failure, but it means something happened, a heart attack, high blood pressure, or a virus that caused the muscle of the heart to go bad, to dilate, to become less strong. Right. No pumping blood, that person's going to be pretty sick for weeks, months, years.
Right.
Not go to bed, say, oh, I felt a little off today, and wake up dead, or don't wake up.
Yeah, and we have statements from her father, Ron Douglas. He said that Tammy seemed relatively healthy days before.
Yeah.
So many people that are close with Tammy knows her well, that know her well. They have said that she was training to run a marathon. So this is definitely a thing that would make you go, right? Just having a little bit of information.
With heart failure, she would not be running marathons.
Correct. Hey, just so you know, your favorite fan, police off the cuff, Bill Cannon, he sent in a $20 super chat. He can't help himself, Barbara. When you're on with me, he has to come and see. So thank you, Bill. Good to see you, brother. So I wanted to get into talking about this cause, asphyxiation. Mm-hmm. Okay. They released it about 8 or 9 months ago, maybe a year ago. It was out there, but then it simmered down and nobody was speaking about this. Tammy Daybell, although, everyone in this case and everybody who has fallen victim to this killing machine of Alex Cox, who is himself now dead, that's Lori's brother, Lori Vallow Daybell, and Chad Daybell. Those three combined together have really done some major damage, and they're evil monsters. But I wanted you to explain, if you could, this cause, this asphyxiation. And I know there's a couple or maybe 4 mechanisms of how this can happen to somebody. And if you could explain that and talk about maybe the possibilities here, because I have so many questions about, can somebody like Tammy Daybell be slowly drugged to have some type of situation where her heart stops, just like Alex Cox did when he started getting exposed and was becoming a weak link. He miraculously came up with a heart failure.
Yeah. So asphyxiation, again, is a very general term. It means lack of oxygen to the brain. So how does that happen? Well, number one is mechanical means, ligature strangulation or manual strangulation. So a rope, hands, that's one way. That's the physical manifestation. Another way to asphyxiate mechanically is by a pillow to the face. Now, that is an interesting one because it leaves very few marks. Now, if I go into a scene where a woman is laying dead in bed, just automatically I raise the eyelids to look for petechial hemorrhages. Those are the little spots of blood that burst through the sclera, the membranes of the eyes, if a person is strangled with a ligature or hands. Okay. Number 2, if a person is asphyxiated with a pillow to the face, that leaves very few marks, but they're very noticeable to the trained investigator. First, you look here under the lip. That little web that holds your lip down? That's called a frenulum. If a person is being smothered with a hand or a pillow, they move their head back and forth like this, and it tears that frenulum. And under the lip, there are little abrasions from the top teeth and the bottom teeth. So a trained investigator will look under the eyes, will look under the lip, will look under the lower lip, look for the torn frenulum, look for the abrasions. That's a sign of mechanical smothering or asphyxiation. So we're in bed, we got pillows. She's got a foam cone around her nose and mouth. That is an indication of respiratory failure, usually kind of slow. So what it means is that as the person's breathing slows down and down and down, the lungs fill with fluid. And as they breathe, it becomes foamy. It rises up like the foam in a shaving can, and it starts to come out of the nose and mouth. So it's a slower asphyxiation. It doesn't usually happen with manual strangulation. Happens with drugs. There are certain drugs that cause you to asphyxiate because you slowly stop breathing. Cyanide, for one, which blocks the absorption of oxygen into the bloodstream, or heroin. Little shot of heroin, just enough, can asphyxiate you. And then, of course, there's gases. Carbon monoxide is a popular way to asphyxiate someone. And there are other drugs too, like you can get the helium tanks that you use to fill up balloons for a kid's party.
Right.
Put it over the face, put a tube on it, just turn on the tank of helium, let them just breathe it in while they're sleeping. They're going to die because the oxygen in the blood is displaced by the helium. So if I were that investigator at that scene, I'd be looking for a whole lot of things.
Right. And in this situation here, we did hear initially from her daughter that when she came to the house, she found her mom on the floor and she talked about a pink frothy substance coming from her mouth, foamy froth. And I remember you talked about that in regards to possible drugs induced into her system or introduced slowly over a period of time. Is there a possibility with this second autopsy that was performed for them to determine definitively what happened to Tammy Daybell?
Yes, and I'm betting on mechanical asphyxiation. In order to exhume somebody's body after 2 months and find definitively that they died of asphyxiation, usually it's because you see the marks. You see the marks of a ligature or manual strangulation. And those don't always show up right away. If an investigator shows up to the house to look at a dead body, you might not see those bruises immediately. So after exhumation, this autopsy found, I shouldn't be certain. It is very likely that they found marks of asphyxiation, either hand marks, finger marks, a ligature, or the torn frenulum and abrasions under the lips, indicating that smothering by hand or by a pillow especially, because that's kind of slow. That gives you time to build up those.
So now, did we spoke about pillow and hand? Is there any other mechanisms of asphyxiation? Like, could someone obviously be asphyxiated if someone put a bag around their head and tied it?
Absolutely. There's a great way, especially if you give somebody a sleeping pill or something. Then just a dry cleaning bag over the head and just tie it, and they asphyxiate peacefully and slowly. And you may see that cone of foam. I see someone in the chat asked if it was a pink cone of foam. What does that mean? And it means there's some blood mixed in with the foam.
Right. And also duct tape, as we know, unfortunately, from the testimony that we heard yesterday from the detective, that JJ was duct taped with the hands, his feet, and his mouth. These perpetrators that are all involved in these heinous murders in the past, we can look at what they did in the past. They duct taped him. They put plastic bags, black garbage bags over his head. We heard this testimony, which was horrific, from the detective. And I played it this morning. I'm not going to play it again, but I know, Barbara, you listened to it. Burning her daughter. We don't know definitively who did this, whether it was Chad or Alex or Lori, all of them together, or one or more. We don't know that, but I'm sure that the prosecutions and the investigator, they have, they know who did this, and they're going to show and talk about this and prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Barbara, what are some of the challenges when someone is already embalmed and put in the ground? You talked on the last live when we mentioned Tammy, you said you still can get the vitreous fluids and so forth, but she was 2 months in the ground. Can you talk just a little bit about some of the challenges with that?
Sure. Toxicology is generally done on bodily fluids, blood being the primary one. You can also use the vitreous fluid, that's what's in your eyeballs. That can be withdrawn and tested. And stomach contents for toxicology. So what's the problem when someone's been embalmed? Well, all the blood has been drained from the body and all the fluids and replaced with formalin, with a preservative agent. So if Tammy Daybell was embalmed, they're not likely to get a good toxicology result at all because those fluids are all gone. Right. There's work being done on liver samples and things like that, but it's not easy. And you mentioned about duct tape, Ron. Duct tape, as you know, when you put it on your skin or across your mouth, it leaves those little bits of adhesive and those little tiny bits of fiber. So a good autopsy will take a close look at the face and say, oh, wait, there's little gum pieces, there's little bits of fiber.
Right.
Damn it, if I was an investigator coming to a woman's house, a 49-year-old woman dead on the floor, I'd be inspecting her left and right.
Yeah, and it seems like, and we don't know this to be 100%, but it seems like it was a quick removal straight to the funeral home and a service, and then her buried. That's the problem here, is that Chad Daybell worked in a cemetery as a gravedigger, right? And he was well known and he was well respected in his community. So when he made the phone call, the funeral director, as soon as he was given the okay. Now, you said that a coroner did go out to the scene. This wasn't one of those elected coroners that had very little. I mean, did we do any research on this coroner that came out to the scene?
No, I think at the time we did we did this a year and a half ago, this case with Bill Cannon. And of course I did look up the investigator and their credentials. And
I'm gonna link it. I'll link it in the description, Barbara, so everybody could go back and watch that. But those are some of the questions that I would have. And, I know a lot of people sent in questions in regards to this. Like, that was a big sticking point. Why did she get released so quickly without any investigating? A relatively healthy 49-year-old woman dies in her home on really no medications other than those two for anxiety or whatever they described there. It just wouldn't fly here. You immediately said, oh no, that wouldn't happen here in the Northeast. And I would hope that wouldn't happen anywhere in the United States, for that matter, because if somebody dies at home with no known issues, it has to be investigated. You have to look at it. But yeah, so that's the real sticking point here. And we have yet to get together and speak about this flawed coroner system, which I want to do with you sometime soon. But you have a book coming out in June, right? I have it linked in the description and I have it on my Amazon. You want to talk a little bit about your book to some of the folks, and then we'll take some questions from the audience and wrap up?
Sure. My book is called What the Dead Know: Learning About Life as a Medical Legal Death Investigator. It is the stories of my adventures in the medical examiner's office, good, bad, and somewhere in between. It is a memoir. There's some pretty gritty stuff in there. And there's a lot of things for those who enjoy working on these crimes. There's a lot to learn in there. I talk about time of death determination and so many other things that we've talked about here. So you can order it from Ron's website or Amazon. And Ron, I believe you're going to do a little event in June, right?
Yes. I'm going to be coming to the event with Ed, and we're going to also. I purchased 10 of the books, and I'm going to be giving them away. And I'm going to get together with you. I'll have to see you again on another time and get you to sign those 10. And I'm going to give them away to some of our loyal audience members that really watch and follow you and us and what we do and what we talk about. So Ed Wallace is mentioned in that book. And I think you said Bill Cannon too? No, or Ed Wallace. Ed Wallace.
Bill is disguised because.
Oh, right. That's right.
No, Ed Wallace is mentioned by name. We worked so many crime scenes together. Bill, I had to, be careful with the names because, well, we had our times, didn't we?
There you go.
And I'm teasing him, but no, there's a lot of people in there you'll recognize. But I did change many of the names because of,
Yeah, you want to protect those folks. Some of the people want to be private and stuff. But Ed, like you said, worked with you after he retired. You took him on, and you were his boss, as he says, in the medical examiner's office in New York City. So you guys did a lot of work together. I am going to link in the description here a link to Barbara's book. I hope you guys will all go and pre-order it. And then when I do that giveaway, that's going to be exciting. And Ed and I and a lot of other folks who are invited to your is it official book signing that you're doing, Barbara, or is it
it's a cocktail party to celebrate with some of my colleagues and friends from the business and you and Ed, and it's been I'll do signings there, of course, but basically it's just a good party and a celebration.
Excellent. I'm going to see if I can get my hands on the 10 copies and bring them and make you go to work while you're
I'll take care of it for you beforehand.
Excellent.
But there will also be other signings around town. I'll be in various bookstores, and if you're in New York, and we can work something out.
This publisher is a pretty big publisher there, Simon & Schuster. You got there.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Can we take some questions from the audience? If you have a question, put hashtag Barbara. Let's keep it pertaining to Tammy Daybell. We know her cause was asphyxiation. They didn't go into details in this in the trial as of yet, exactly how this occurred. But I would imagine that they will get to that. They're going to have to spell this out, and we are going to be hearing more from the prosecution in regards to how Tammy Daybell, met her demise. So I think that it's going to be a great deal of information to process, but Barbara's here to help us understand that process in layman's terms. So that's what's always great about her. Vicky says she really wants to get that book. Well, I have it linked and you're going to be able to see it, but I think she's saying I really want to get the free signed copy. Let me scan the chat real quick. Let's see. Somebody says, I want to have cocktails with Barbara and Ron. Well, maybe
I'd like to have a drink with you, Ron, but we never have time to get together.
I know, and we live local. I mean, essentially, we're close. I'm within driving distance of you, so it's shame on us. Looks like a very good book, says Olivia. Thank you. I can't wait to read it. I'm going to dive into it tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, folks, tonight at 9 p.m., we're going to do a recap of day 6, 4, 5, and 6 of Trezell and Jacqueline West. Those are the boys from Bakersfield, California, Orrin and Orson West, Sincere and Classic. They were murdered by their adoptive parents, and they're on trial. And we're going to go over it with Melanie Little tonight at 9 p.m. That's going to be my 3rd live stream. This is a record. I don't think I've ever done 3 live streams in one day. So today's been a busy day, but there's no questions. I'm trying to scan the chat.
I see one from Iris Hewlett about whether we're going to do a show on the coroner system in the country. And yeah, I think that'll be a good one, Ron. We'll have to sit down and work that out in advance because the system in this country is messed up.
Absolutely. And I want to tackle that because so many people are dying and they're not getting justice.
That's
Look,
right.
if this was a situation where Lori Vallow was not wiping people out left and right, Tammy Daybell might have got buried without anybody knowing that she was murdered.
That's
So,
right.
you know, yeah, if you have a question, just put hashtag Barbara in the chat and I will highlight that question. There's one right in from A Quail. Barbara, I'm curious, does embalming preserve the skin enough to determine certain types of asphyxiation, or would it be more likely they found a hyoid bone broken? Thank you for that question.
Yeah, good point. The hyoid bone, if that was fractured, that's an indication of manual strangulation and also sometimes ligature strangulation, depending on the way it's held and pulled. So yes, absolutely. If the hyoid bone was fractured, now we know it's strangulation. As far as the skin preservation, yes, it preserves the skin quite well, and you could see bruises. But I'm wondering, the funeral director would have seen those bruises coming up a day or two later. So I'm going to be very interested to see when the medical examiner testifies and gives us the findings.
Barbara, I'm going to put you on the spot, and this is at the end. We're at the 31-minute mark. We should have already been done already, but I got to put you on the spot. Tylee and JJ, we heard testimony from the lead detective that JJ was duct taped, buried under the ground with a bag over his head, and really horrible conditions. That was
some boards thrown over him.
Plywood. They had to dig down. We heard the detective talk about how they had to take breaks and only go for a couple of minutes sifting through the dirt, but they made sure they dug down enough to make sure that there were no more teeth, there was no more evidence. How difficult is that for the medical examiner's team, the anthropologist now we know is got to be involved in this thing, a forensic pathologist, maybe the bug doctor, right? Come into play with this case. They said that that Tylee was burned, and the bucket that her remains were in was sloughing just skin and flesh. What can they come up with for a cause and manner of death, especially for not JJ but Tylee? Because JJ's body was not burned the way that they described and mutilated. What's the challenges there, Barbara? What can they do with that?
Well, they're awful. I mean, first, of course, is the emotional, component. When children are found buried like that and in such horrible condition, it's emotionally sickening. Very, very difficult work. But on the identification of cause and manner, it is so hard. Now, this is where anthropologists really come in. If the body is burned, the bones often, they fracture, they fragment. And so we're not going to have any flesh wounds that we could see. So if she was stabbed or cut, we wouldn't know. If she was shot, a forensic anthropologist would very likely be able to put together pieces of bone and see if there's a bullet impact mark, especially if it was the skull.
Right.
Put the pieces together and you'll see the entry wound and possibly an exit wound. If a person was shot in the chest, you might see a bullet mark on a rib, but it is so damn difficult. If she were strangled or asphyxiated, smothered, any of those things, not going to know it, unless, of course, the hyoid bone is broken.
Right. Yeah, and we had Dr. Murray Marks on with you the last time, and he said that the bone is a amazing tissue, he called it. These are his words. He said it retains all of the damage that's done to it. So if there was blunt force trauma and so forth, the skull would indicate that. I thank you for going there, and I didn't, that's not what this stream was about. It was about Tammy Daybell, but I couldn't not ask you while I had you here. So I want to just say thank you to all of the replay viewers, the live chatters, the moderators, and all the folks who come in here and positively engage. If you have a question, put it down below in the comment section. Barbara is a frequent flyer of the show. She's got frequent flyer miles, and she comes on as much as she can. I mean, she's busy and she's doing a lot of stuff, but I want everybody to go out there and pick up her book and support her in this adventure. So, Barbara, on behalf of myself and Ed Wallace, I thank you so much for joining us. This has been a short episode of Crime Time with DutyRon. We usually do much longer ones, but thank you, Barbara, for taking out the time.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you to all our colleagues and your fans and the people that help give us good ideas for what's next. Thanks all, and stay safe.
And as I always like to end these things, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially these poor victims and their families. So first responders and everyone who's involved in justice, bringing justice to Tylee, JJ, and Tammy Daybell. Thank you so much. Good night from New York, and we'll see you soon. Peace and love, guys.